Germany's journey through time is a riveting tale of tribes, kingdoms, empires, and the relentless pursuit of unity, a land that has been both a crucible of conflict and a beacon of culture. In this ** 4K documentary **, we traverse the depths of its history, from the early Germanic tribes and the rise of the Frankish Empire to the dramatic events of the World Wars and the poignant reunification of East and West Germany. Join us as we explore the moments that have defined this resilient nation and shaped the course of European history. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment your favorite moment in German history, and subscribe for more documentaries. The story of Germany begins long before the formation of modern states, rooted deep in the ancient lands inhabited by diverse Germanic tribes. These early peoples, known collectively as the Germanic tribes, emerged during the first millennium BC, spreading across the dense forests and fertile plains of Central Europe. Among these tribes were the Suebi, Saxons, and Goths, each carving out distinct identities and territories. Their origins remain shrouded in the mists of prehistory, but their impact on European history is undeniable. The Germanic tribes lived in loosely organized clans and chiefdoms, with social structures centered around kinship and warrior bands. Their way of life was closely tied to the land, relying on agriculture, hunting, and trade. These tribes were not a single unified entity but rather a mosaic of peoples sharing linguistic roots and cultural traits. Their early history is marked by constant movement and interaction, both peaceful and hostile, with neighboring peoples. One of the defining features of early Germanic history was their interaction with the mighty Roman Empire. As Rome expanded northward, it encountered the Germanic tribes along the Rhine and Danube rivers, which served as natural frontiers. These borders became the stage for centuries of conflict and exchange. The Roman Empire sought to control these borderlands to secure its provinces and trade routes, while the Germanic tribes resisted Roman domination fiercely. The most famous clash between Rome and the Germanic peoples occurred in 9 AD at the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. In this ambush, an alliance of Germanic tribes led by Arminius, a chieftain of the Cherusei tribe, decisively defeated 3 Roman legions. This catastrophic loss halted Roman expansion into Germania and marked a turning point in the history of the region. The battle symbolized the resilience and military prowess of the Germanic tribes and ensured that the lands east of the Rhine would remain outside direct Roman control. Despite their conflicts, the Germanic tribes were not isolated from the broader currents of European history. They engaged in trade with Rome and other Mediterranean civilizations, exchanging goods such as amber, furs, and slaves for Roman wine, glassware, and luxury items. This interaction fostered cultural exchange and technological diffusion, influencing the development of Germanic societies. The political landscape among the Germanic tribes was fluid. Alliances shifted, and power often rested in the hands of charismatic war leaders. Tribal confederations sometimes formed to face common threats, but these coalitions were fragile and often dissolved after crises passed. The lack of a centralized authority meant that Germanic society was decentralized, with local chieftains wielding influence over small territories. As the Roman Empire began to wane in the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, pressure on the Germanic tribes increased. The migrations and invasions of the so-called migration periods saw waves of tribes moving across Europe, often into Roman lands. These movements were driven by a combination of factors, including population pressures, climate change, and the push of nomadic groups like the Huns from the east. During this tumultuous era, some Germanic tribes, such as the Goths, Vandals, and Lombards, crossed the Roman borders and established kingdoms within the remnants of the Western Roman Empire. Others remained in their ancestral lands, adapting to the changing political landscape. The Suebi, for example, settled in parts of what is now modern Germany and Portugal, maintaining their distinct identity. Culturally, the Germanic tribes possessed rich traditions in oral storytelling, mythology, and craftsmanship. Their religious beliefs centered around a pantheon of gods associated with natural forces and warrior virtues. These beliefs would later be influenced and partially supplanted by Christianity, but during this early period, they formed the spiritual foundation of Germanic life. Archaeological findings from this era reveal the complexity of Germanic societies. Burial sites, weaponry, and artifacts demonstrate a mixture of martial culture and artisanal skill. Settlements ranged from small villages to fortified hilltop sites, reflecting both peaceful habitation and defensive needs. The Germanic tribes also played a key role in shaping the linguistic landscape of Europe. Their languages formed the basis of the Germanic branch of the Indo-European language family, which includes modern German, English, Dutch, and the Scandinavian languages. This linguistic heritage highlights the enduring influence of these early peoples. Throughout late antiquity, the Germanic tribes continued to evolve politically and culturally. Some, like the Franks and Alemanni, began to consolidate power and territory, setting the stage for the emergence of medieval European kingdoms. Others maintained their independence, preserving local customs and governance structures. The interaction between the Germanic peoples and the Romans was not solely antagonistic. There were periods of cooperation and assimilation. Some Germanic leaders served as foederati, allied troops of the Roman Empire, providing military assistance in exchange for land and status. This blending of Roman and Germanic elements would later influence the development of medieval European culture and political organization. By the end of this early period, the Germanic tribes had firmly established themselves as a dominant force in Central Europe. Their resilience against Roman conquest, dynamic social structures, and cultural richness laid the foundation for the complex history that would follow. The legacy of these tribes is woven into the fabric of European history, influencing the formation of nations, languages, and identities. The early Germanic era is a story of tribes and territories, warfare and alliance, migration and settlement. It is a testament to the enduring spirit of peoples who shaped the course of history long before the rise of kingdoms and empires. This chapter in the history of Germany sets the stage for the dramatic transformations that would unfold in the centuries to come, as the Germanic world moved from tribal confederations to the dawn of medieval Christendom. As the Germanic tribes navigated the decline of Roman authority in the late antiquity period, a new power began to rise among them, the Franks. Emerging from the western regions of the Germanic world, the Franks were initially a confederation of smaller tribes who gradually coalesced into a formidable force. Their rise marked a turning point in the history of the Germanic peoples, setting the stage for the transformation of Europe from the remnants of Roman rule to a new medieval order. The collapse of Roman authority in the 5th century created a power vacuum across much of Western Europe. The Roman Empire, weakened by internal strife and external pressures, could no longer maintain effective control over its provinces. This decline opened the door for various Germanic tribes, including the Franks, to expand their territories and influence. Unlike some tribes that moved into former Roman lands only temporarily, the Franks sought to establish lasting control, blending Roman traditions with their own customs. Central to the rise of the Frankish kingdom was Clovis I, a chieftain of the Salian Franks, who came to power around the late 5th century. Clovis was a shrewd and ambitious leader who unified the Frankish tribes under his rule through a combination of military conquest and strategic alliances. His reign is often viewed as the foundation of the medieval Frankish state, which would become the precursor to modern France and Germany. One of Clovis's most significant acts was his conversion to Christianity, a decision that had profound implications for the political and cultural landscape of Europe. Traditionally, the Germanic tribes practiced pagan religions, worshipping a pantheon of gods tied to nature and warfare. Clovis's baptism into Nicene Christianity, reportedly influenced by his wife Clotilde, a Burgundian princess and Christian, aligned the Frankish realm with the powerful institution of the Church. This religious conversion helped legitimize Clovis's rule and facilitated alliances with the Roman Catholic Church and the Gallo-Roman population of his territories. It also distinguished the Franks from other Germanic tribes who adhered to Arian Christianity or pagan beliefs, positioning them as defenders of Orthodox Christianity. The Church, in turn, gained a powerful secular ally, which would shape the future relationship between religious and political authorities in Europe. Under Clovis, the Franks embarked on a series of military campaigns that expanded their realm significantly. He defeated rival tribes and Roman rump states, consolidating control over much of Gaul, the territory roughly corresponding to modern France and parts of Western Germany. This expansion laid the groundwork for the eventual unification of large parts of Western Europe under Frankish rule. The Frankish kingdom was not merely a military entity but also a political and cultural force. The integration of Roman administrative practices helped stabilize governance, while Frankish customs and laws blended to create a unique societal structure. This synthesis facilitated the transition from the Roman world to the medieval era. The Church played an increasingly central role in Frankish society. Monasteries became centers of learning, preserving classical texts and promoting literacy and scholarship. Clergy advised rulers and helped administer justice, embedding religious values into the fabric of governance and daily life. The rise of the Franks also influenced the broader Germanic world. Their success inspired neighboring tribes and kingdoms to consolidate power and adopt Christianity. Over time, the Frankish model of kingship, which combined martial prowess with religious authority, became a template for emerging European monarchies. The Christianization of the Franks had wider ramifications beyond politics. It initiated a profound cultural transformation, as pagan customs gradually gave way to Christian rituals and festivals. The Church's moral and legal codes began to shape social norms, redefining concepts of justice, family, and community. This period also saw the strengthening of ties between the Frankish rulers and the papacy in Rome. The alliance between the Frankish monarchy and the Church would culminate in significant events in the following centuries, including the crowning of Charlemagne as emperor. The foundation for this relationship was laid during Clovis's reign, highlighting the intertwined destinies of secular and ecclesiastical power. By the end of this era, the Frankish kingdom had emerged as a dominant force in Western Europe. It stood as a bulwark against external threats, including incursions by other Germanic tribes and remnants of Roman authority. The kingdom also acted as a cultural bridge, preserving and transforming classical heritage while fostering the growth of medieval European civilization. The legacy of the Frankish rise extends beyond their political achievements. Their embrace of Christianity and the Church set the stage for the religious landscape of Europe for centuries to come. The Frankish rulers became patrons of the arts and education, encouraging developments that would culminate in the Carolingian Renaissance. The establishment of the Frankish kingdom signaled a new chapter in the story of the Germanic peoples. From fragmented tribal societies, they were moving towards centralized states intertwined with the Christian Church. This transformation was neither swift nor smooth, marked by conflicts and adaptations, but it laid the groundwork for the medieval order. The Frankish example demonstrated how the Germanic tribes could evolve from warriors and migrants into rulers and statesmen. It also highlighted the importance of religious conversion as a tool for political consolidation and cultural integration. The Frankish kingdom became a beacon for other Germanic groups, illustrating a path forward in a changing world. Through military strength, religious conversion, and administrative innovation, the Franks forged a kingdom that bridged the classical past and the medieval future. Their story is a testament to the dynamic nature of history, where cultures and powers collide and merge to create new realities. As the Frankish realm expanded and solidified, it set in motion forces that would shape Europe for centuries. The alliance between throne and altar, the fusion of Roman and Germanic traditions, and the spread of Christianity all contributed to a profound transformation of the continent. The rise of the Franks thus marks a pivotal moment in the history of Germany and Europe at large. It heralds the beginning of a new political and cultural era, one that would eventually lead to the formation of the Holy Roman Empire and the complex tapestry of medieval European states. This era is characterized by the emergence of centralized authority from tribal roots, the ascendancy of Christianity as a unifying force, and the laying of foundations for medieval civilization. It is a story of adaptation and ambition, where the Germanic peoples began to shape the destiny of Europe in profound and lasting ways. The legacy of the Frankish kingdom reached its zenith with the rise of Charlemagne, a towering figure whose reign transformed the political and cultural landscape of Western Europe. Born around 742 AD, Charlemagne inherited a realm that his grandfather, Charles Martel, had begun to consolidate, and his father, Pepin the Short, had formally established as the Carolingian dynasty. Charlemagne's ambition and vision would unite much of the continent under a single rule, reviving the dream of a Roman Empire in the West and laying the foundations for medieval Europe. Charlemagne's rise to power was marked by relentless military campaigns and a strategic expansion of his realm. He extended Frankish control across vast territories, including modern-day France, Germany, Italy, and beyond. His conquests subdued Saxons in the north, Lombards in Italy, and Avars in Central Europe, integrating diverse peoples under his rule. These campaigns were not merely territorial ambitions, they were also driven by a mission to spread Christianity, often enforced through conversion by sword or treaty. In 800 AD, Charlemagne's rule reached a symbolic pinnacle when Pope Leo III crowned him Emperor of the Romans on Christmas Day in St. Peter's Basilica. This moment was a profound assertion of the revival of the Western Roman Empire's legacy, which had fallen centuries earlier. The coronation represented the fusion of Christian authority with imperial power and signaled a new era where the church and state would be intertwined in governance and ideology. Charlemagne's empire was vast but faced the inherent challenge of governing diverse regions with different customs, languages, and laws. To address this, he implemented administrative reforms that strengthened central authority while accommodating local autonomy. He appointed loyal counts and dukes to govern provinces, enforced standardized laws, and established a network of royal agents, known as missi dominici, who traveled the empire to oversee local officials and ensure justice. Beyond governance, Charlemagne was a fervent patron of learning and culture, ushering in what historians call the Carolingian Renaissance. Recognizing the decline in literacy and classical knowledge following the collapse of Rome, he encouraged the revival of education, the arts, and scholarship. Monasteries and cathedral schools flourished, becoming centers of learning that preserved ancient texts and produced new works in theology, philosophy, and science. Charlemagne himself was deeply engaged in intellectual pursuits. He surrounded himself with scholars, such as Alcuin of York, who advised him on educational reforms and helped standardize the Latin language used in administration and religious practice. This cultural revival not only enhanced the intellectual life of the empire but also strengthened the cohesion of his diverse subjects under a shared Christian and Latin heritage. Religious reform was central to Charlemagne's vision. He worked closely with the church to enforce Christian doctrine and discipline among his subjects, promoting missionary activity and suppressing pagan practices. The alliance between the emperor and the papacy was mutually reinforcing. The church gained protection and influence, while Charlemagne derived legitimacy and divine sanction for his rule. Despite these achievements, Charlemagne's empire faced significant challenges. The vastness of the territory made communication and control difficult, and local nobles retained considerable power. Moreover, external threats from Viking raids in the north, Muslim incursions from the south, and Magyar invasions from the east tested the empire's defenses. Charlemagne's military campaigns often aimed to secure borders and suppress rebellions, underscoring the constant tension between unity and fragmentation. After Charlemagne's death in 814 AD, the empire he forged was inherited by his son, Louis the Pious. Louis sought to continue his father's legacy but faced internal dissent and external pressures that weakened imperial authority. The empire gradually fragmented under the rule of Louis' sons, culminating in the Treaty of Verdun in 843 AD, which divided the Carolingian Empire into three kingdoms. This partition laid the groundwork for the future political map of Europe, with the Middle Kingdom eventually dissolving and the eastern and western realms evolving into Germany and France, respectively. Charlemagne's reign stands as a transformative epoch that bridged the ancient Roman world and the medieval era. His empire symbolized the rebirth of centralized imperial authority in Western Europe, underpinned by Christian ideology and cultural revival. The Carolingian Renaissance set intellectual and artistic standards that resonated throughout the Middle Ages, influencing education, governance, and religion. The coronation of Charlemagne as emperor by the Pope also established a precedent for the divine right of kings and the sacred nature of monarchy, concepts that would shape European political thought for centuries. The fusion of church and state authority, initiated during his reign, became a defining characteristic of medieval Europe's political order. Charlemagne's administrative innovations, such as his use of missi dominici and codified laws, anticipated the complex feudal systems that would later dominate medieval governance. Though his empire did not survive intact beyond the 9th century, its legacy endured in the institutions, cultural achievements, and political ideals it bequeathed. The Carolingian Empire's fragmentation after Charlemagne's death did not diminish his historical significance. Instead, it highlighted the challenges of maintaining a vast, multi-ethnic empire in a period of shifting power dynamics and external threats. The division of the empire sowed the seeds for the formation of distinct European nations, while preserving the memory of imperial unity. Charlemagne's vision and achievements left an indelible mark on European history, influencing the development of the Holy Roman Empire and the medieval world. His reign represents a high point in the fusion of Germanic and Roman traditions, the consolidation of Christian Europe, and the revival of learning and culture after centuries of instability. In this way, Charlemagne's era is both a culmination of earlier developments among the Germanic peoples and a foundation for future transformations. It is a story of ambition, conquest, reform, and cultural flourishing that reshaped the continent and defined the medieval age. In the wake of the fragmentation of Charlemagne's empire, the landscape of Central Europe underwent profound political and religious transformations that gave rise to what would become the Holy Roman Empire. The Ottonian dynasty emerged as a key force during this period, restoring a measure of imperial authority and forging new bonds between the Germanic kingship and the papacy. This era marked the re-establishment of imperial power rooted in the legacy of the Carolingians, but adapted to the shifting realities of the 10th century. The Ottonian dynasty began with Henry I, known as Henry the Fowler, who was elected king of East Francia in 919 AD. He focused on consolidating his rule over the Germanic territories, strengthening borders against external threats such as Magyar invasions, and uniting various duchies under his leadership. His efforts laid the groundwork for a more centralized monarchy that could claim legitimacy not only through lineage but also through effective governance and military defense. Henry's son, Otto I, ascended to the throne in 936 AD and is often regarded as the founder of the Holy Roman Empire. Otto's reign was characterized by both military prowess and political acumen. He successfully defeated the Magyars at the Battle of Lechfeld in 955 AD, securing the eastern borders and enhancing his reputation as a defender of Christendom. Otto's victory was a turning point, stabilizing the region and enabling further consolidation of power. Otto I's relationship with the papacy was pivotal in shaping the nature of his rule and the future of the empire. In 962 AD, Pope John XII crowned Otto as emperor, reviving the imperial title in the West and symbolically linking the German kingship with the legacy of the ancient Roman Empire. This coronation marked the formal beginning of the Holy Roman Empire, a polity that claimed to be the continuation of the Roman imperial tradition infused with Christian authority. The alliance between the Ottonian emperors and the papacy was mutually reinforcing but also complex and fraught with tension. The emperors sought to protect and influence the church, while the popes relied on imperial support to maintain their spiritual and temporal authority. This partnership shaped the political and religious landscape of medieval Europe, intertwining secular and ecclesiastical power in unprecedented ways. One of the defining conflicts of this period was the investiture controversy, a struggle over who held the authority to appoint bishops and abbots, the emperor or the pope. This dispute highlighted the delicate balance between imperial control and papal independence. The controversy underscored the broader question of how power was distributed between church and state, and would have lasting repercussions for the structure of medieval European governance. Territorially, the Holy Roman Empire was a patchwork of duchies, principalities, bishoprics, and free cities, each with varying degrees of autonomy. The emperor's authority was often limited by the power of local princes and nobles, who controlled their own lands and armies. This decentralized political structure meant that the empire functioned more as a loose confederation than a unified state, with the emperor serving as a primus inter pares, first among equals. Despite these limitations, the emperor retained significant influence through his role as a religious and political figurehead. Imperial coronations, often performed by the pope, reinforced the sacred nature of the monarchy and its claim to universal authority within Christendom. The emperor's ability to mediate disputes, convene imperial diets, and grant privileges helped maintain a semblance of unity among the diverse territories. The Ottonian emperors also expanded their influence through ecclesiastical appointments, often placing loyal bishops and abbots in key positions. This strategy allowed the emperors to exert control over church lands and resources, reinforcing their political power while advancing the church's mission. Monasteries and cathedrals continued to serve as centers of learning and cultural life, preserving classical knowledge and fostering religious devotion. Culturally, the Ottonian period saw a continuation of the Carolingian Renaissance's emphasis on art, architecture, and scholarship. Ottonian art and architecture blended classical, Christian, and Germanic elements, producing distinctive illuminated manuscripts, metalwork, and monumental buildings. This cultural flowering reflected the empire's ambition to embody both the glory of Rome and the spiritual authority of Christianity. The political landscape of the Holy Roman Empire was further complicated by the role of the imperial princes, who wielded considerable autonomy and influence. These princes often had their own armies and courts, and their support was crucial for the emperor's election and governance. The elective nature of the monarchy meant that emperors had to negotiate and balance the interests of powerful nobles, making imperial authority contingent and often contested. The empire's decentralized structure also fostered the development of free imperial cities, which gained privileges and autonomy under imperial protection. These cities became centers of trade, commerce, and civic life, contributing to the economic vitality of the empire. The rise of these urban centers introduced new dynamics into the political order, with merchants and guilds playing increasingly important roles. Throughout this period, the relationship between the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy remained a central theme. While cooperation brought mutual benefits, conflicts over authority and jurisdiction erupted repeatedly. The investiture controversy was only one episode in a long history of negotiations and power struggles, reflecting the tension between spiritual and temporal domains. The Holy Roman Empire's nature as a decentralized and multi-ethnic entity made it both resilient and fragile. Its existence depended on a delicate balance of power among emperors, princes, clergy, and cities. This complex political fabric would endure for centuries, shaping the political evolution of Central Europe and influencing the broader medieval world. The Ottonian dynasty's efforts to revive the imperial tradition and strengthen ties with the church established a model of rulership that combined religious legitimacy with secular authority. This model would be emulated and adapted by subsequent dynasties, embedding the idea of a Christian empire at the heart of European identity. The empire's political structure reflected the realities of medieval power. Authority was dispersed, alliances were crucial, and legitimacy was often negotiated through ritual and ceremony. The emperor's role was as much symbolic as practical, embodying the unity of Christendom while navigating the competing interests of diverse stakeholders. The formation of the Holy Roman Empire under the Ottonians marked a significant chapter in the history of Germany and Europe. It represented the continuation and transformation of the Carolingian legacy, adapting imperial ideals to a new era defined by feudalism, religious authority, and regional diversity. This period set the stage for ongoing developments in medieval politics, law, and culture. The tensions and collaborations between emperors and popes, the balance of power between central authority and local rulers, and the integration of religious and secular governance would shape the trajectory of European history for centuries. The Holy Roman Empire's emergence was not a straightforward restoration of Roman authority but a complex reimagining of empire suited to the medieval world. Its decentralized nature, religious character, and political structures reflected the intricate realities of governing a continent marked by diversity and change. In this way, the Ottonian dynasty and the early Holy Roman Empire laid the foundations for a political and cultural order that defined the Middle Ages. Their legacy is evident in the enduring institutions, conflicts, and ideas that continued to influence Europe long after the empire's formal dissolution. As the Holy Roman Empire evolved through the medieval period, a remarkable transformation unfolded within its borders. The rise of cities and the growth of commerce reshaped the social and political fabric of German lands. From modest trading posts and fortified settlements, vibrant urban centers emerged, becoming hubs of economic activity, cultural exchange, and political power. This urban renaissance reflected broader shifts in medieval society and laid the groundwork for the complex interactions between rulers, merchants, and artisans that characterized later European history. The growth of trade was a driving force behind the emergence of these cities. Situated along vital river routes such as the Rhine and Danube, many German towns became key nodes in regional and long-distance trade networks. Merchants transported goods ranging from salt and textiles to metals and spices, linking the interior of Europe with the Mediterranean and the Baltic regions. This commerce brought wealth and opportunity, fostering the development of marketplaces and craft industries. Central to the economic vitality of northern Germany was the Hanseatic League, a powerful confederation of merchant cities and guilds that rose to prominence in the 13th and 14th centuries. The League began as a loose alliance aimed at protecting trade interests and securing safe passage for merchants along the Baltic and North Seas. Over time, it grew into a formidable political and economic force, establishing trading posts, negotiating privileges with rulers, and even commanding naval power. The Hanseatic cities, including Lübeck, Hamburg, and Bremen, became synonymous with prosperity and influence. Their merchants controlled much of the trade in timber, furs, grain, and fish, contributing to the economic integration of Northern Europe. The League's success depended on cooperation among cities but also on a shared legal framework and mutual defense agreements, exemplifying the growing sophistication of urban governance. Within these burgeoning cities, guilds played a crucial role in regulating economic life. Guilds were associations of craftsmen and merchants who controlled the production and sale of goods, maintained quality standards, and protected their members' interests. They organized apprenticeships, set prices, and enforced rules that shaped the urban economy. Guilds also wielded social and political influence, often participating in city councils and contributing to public life. The rise of free imperial cities added another layer to the urban landscape. These cities enjoyed privileges granted directly by the emperor, allowing them a degree of self-governance and exemption from local feudal lords. This status empowered cities to develop their own laws, courts, and militias, fostering a sense of civic identity and autonomy. Examples include Nuremberg, Cologne, and Frankfurt, which became centers of commerce, law, and culture. Eastern expansion, known as the Ostsiedlung, further shaped medieval Germany's urban and demographic growth. German settlers moved eastward into Slavic and Baltic territories, founding new towns and villages and introducing German law and customs. This colonization was often supported by princes and ecclesiastical authorities, who sought to extend their influence and bring fertile lands under cultivation. The Ostsiedlung contributed to the diffusion of German culture and language and altered the ethnic and political map of Central and Eastern Europe. The military and religious orders also played a significant role during this period. The Teutonic Knights, a crusading order founded in the late 12th century, combined martial and religious missions. They established a monastic state in Prussia, waging campaigns to Christianize pagan populations and expanding Germanic influence eastward. Their presence symbolized the fusion of religious zeal and territorial ambition that characterized medieval expansion. Culturally, the growth of cities fostered vibrant artistic and architectural achievements. Gothic architecture flourished, with soaring cathedrals and town halls symbolizing both religious devotion and civic pride. These monumental structures were often funded by wealthy merchants and guilds, reflecting the economic prosperity and social aspirations of urban communities. The social fabric of medieval German cities was complex and dynamic. While merchants and craftsmen enjoyed economic success and political participation, tensions existed between different social groups. The rise of a wealthy bourgeoisie sometimes clashed with traditional nobility and rural populations. Moreover, the cities attracted diverse populations, including immigrants and minorities, which occasionally led to social conflicts and upheavals. Peasant uprisings and social unrest were recurrent features of this period. Economic hardships, oppressive feudal obligations, and demands for greater rights sparked revolts in rural areas and sometimes spilled into urban centers. These uprisings challenged the established order and prompted responses ranging from repression to reforms by local rulers. The increasing importance of cities also altered the balance of power within the Holy Roman Empire. While emperors and princes retained significant authority, the economic and political strength of cities made them indispensable players. Imperial diets and regional assemblies began to include representatives from cities and guilds, reflecting their growing influence in governance. This urban ascendancy contributed to the gradual development of more complex political institutions. The interplay between monarchs, nobles, clergy, and urban elites created a multifaceted political landscape where negotiation, alliance, and conflict coexisted. Cities became arenas for civic engagement and power struggles, shaping the trajectory of German medieval society. The integration of commerce, law, and culture within these urban centers also had lasting cultural effects. The preservation and dissemination of knowledge flourished in city schools and universities, fostering intellectual movements that would later culminate in the Renaissance. Artistic patronage and literary production reflected the aspirations and identities of emerging urban classes. Moreover, the Hanseatic League and other city alliances exemplified early forms of collective security and economic cooperation, foreshadowing later developments in European political and economic integration. The League's decline in the late Middle Ages was gradual but left a legacy of trade networks and urban self-government that influenced future generations. Throughout this period, the relationship between cities and their surrounding territories was dynamic. While cities benefited from imperial protection and autonomy, they also depended on rural hinterlands for resources and labor. The tensions and cooperation between urban and rural areas shaped social and economic patterns, influencing settlement, agriculture, and trade. In sum, the medieval rise of cities in German lands was a transformative phenomenon that reshaped the region's economy, society, and politics. From the bustling ports of the Hanseatic League to the free imperial cities with their charters and guilds, urban centers became engines of growth and innovation. Their development reflected broader European trends, but was also shaped by local conditions and traditions. This chapter in German history reveals the intricate connections between trade, governance, culture, and social change. It highlights the emergence of new forms of political organization and economic life that would underpin the transition from medieval to early modern Europe. The rise of cities was not merely a story of economic expansion but also one of social complexity, cultural creativity, and evolving power structures. As the medieval period progressed, these urban developments set the stage for the challenges and transformations that lay ahead, including religious upheaval, territorial conflicts, and the gradual formation of modern states. The cities and their leagues became crucibles of change, where old traditions met new ideas, and where the destiny of German lands was increasingly shaped by commerce, law, and civic pride. The medieval cities and cultural life of Germany, thriving in the late Middle Ages, soon became the crucible for one of the most profound transformations in European history, the Protestant Reformation. This religious upheaval, ignited in the early 16th century by Martin Luther, a German monk and theologian, challenged the very foundations of the Catholic Church and reshaped the spiritual, political, and social landscape of the German territories. Martin Luther's world was one deeply influenced by the pervasive power of the Catholic Church, which had long held spiritual and temporal authority across Europe. Yet, by the early 1500s, criticisms of the Church's practices, such as the sale of indulgences, certificates believed to reduce punishment for sins, were mounting. Luther's 95 Theses, nailed to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church in 1517, articulated these grievances and called for reform, sparking a movement that rapidly spread throughout German lands and beyond. Luther's ideas resonated with many who saw the Church's corruption as a barrier to true faith and salvation. His emphasis on Scripture as the sole authority, the priesthood of all believers, and justification by faith alone challenged the traditional hierarchy and dogma of Catholicism. These theological positions empowered individuals and communities to interpret the Bible themselves, diminishing the Church's monopoly on religious knowledge. The spread of Lutheranism was facilitated by the printing press, a relatively recent invention that allowed for the rapid dissemination of pamphlets, translations of the Bible, and treatises. This technological advancement amplified Luther's message and enabled a wide audience to engage with reformist ideas. German princes and city leaders, motivated by religious conviction or political advantage, often supported the Reformation, furthering its reach. However, the Reformation also unleashed deep social and political tensions. The Peasants' War of 1524 to 1525 was a major uprising fueled by economic hardship, and inspired in part by the language of spiritual equality and justice that Luther's ideas had unleashed. Peasants demanded relief from feudal obligations and greater rights, but when the revolt turned violent, Luther condemned it, aligning himself with the ruling classes and underscoring the complex relationship between religion and social order. Religious divisions hardened as Lutheranism spread, provoking resistance from the Catholic Church and leading to decades of conflict. The fragmentation of Christendom was not only a spiritual crisis but also a political one, as princes and cities chose sides, aligning with either Protestantism or Catholicism. This religious polarization set the stage for one of the most devastating conflicts in European history, the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, began as a struggle within the Holy Roman Empire between Catholic and Protestant states but quickly escalated into a broader European conflict involving major powers such as France, Sweden, and Spain. The war devastated German lands, with widespread destruction, famine, and population loss. Entire regions were depopulated, economies ruined, and social structures shattered. It was a brutal reminder of the intertwined nature of religious and political strife. The conflict finally ended with the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, a series of treaties that reshaped the political order of the Holy Roman Empire and Europe as a whole. The peace recognized the sovereignty of the various German princes and allowed them to choose their territory's religion, Catholicism, Lutheranism, or Calvinism, effectively legalizing religious pluralism within the empire. This settlement diminished imperial authority, confirming the decentralized nature of the empire and setting a precedent for state sovereignty in international law. The Reformation and its aftermath profoundly altered German society. The religious landscape was forever changed, with Protestantism becoming a dominant force in many regions, while others remained stanchly Catholic. Confessional identities became deeply ingrained, influencing culture, education, and politics. The division also affected alliances and rivalries, contributing to the complex patchwork of states within the empire. The Catholic Church itself underwent its own reform through the Counter-Reformation, initiated by the Council of Trent, 1545 to 1563, which sought to address abuses and reaffirm Catholic doctrine. New religious orders, such as the Jesuits, played a crucial role in revitalizing Catholicism, particularly in southern Germany and the Habsburg lands, often engaging in education and missionary work to reclaim lost ground. The educational institutions established during the Reformation contributed to the spread of literacy and learning, with Protestant emphasis on personal Bible reading fostering widespread education. Universities became centers of theological debate and intellectual development, influencing not only religion but also broader cultural and scientific advances. The religious conflicts also had lasting effects on governance and law. The Peace of Westphalia's recognition of state sovereignty laid the groundwork for the modern nation-state system, diminishing the universal claims of empire and church. The principle that rulers could determine their territory's religion shaped the political geography of Europe and influenced diplomatic relations for centuries. Moreover, the Reformation inspired new forms of religious expression and community organization. Protestant churches developed distinct liturgies, ecclesiastical structures, and social ethics, influencing everyday life and community norms. The emphasis on individual conscience and scripture contributed to cultural shifts towards personal responsibility and moral rigor. However, the religious fragmentation also entrenched divisions that would periodically flare into conflict. Confessional boundaries often aligned with political and ethnic lines, complicating efforts at unification and cooperation within the German lands. These divisions persisted into the modern era, influencing political alignments and cultural identities. In sum, the Reformation was not merely a religious movement but a catalyst for profound transformation in German society. It challenged established authorities, reshaped political power, and altered cultural and intellectual life. The wars and conflicts it provoked underscored the dangers of sectarianism but also propelled the development of new political principles and religious freedoms. The legacy of the Reformation remains central to understanding the evolution of Germany and Europe. It introduced ideas of individual faith and conscience, contributed to the rise of literacy and education, and fundamentally changed the relationship between church and state. The religious turmoil of the 16th and 17th centuries set the stage for the modern world, influencing concepts of governance, sovereignty, and cultural identity. This era marked a turning point from medieval Christendom to early modern pluralism, where competing religious and political interests coexisted in uneasy balance. The story of the Reformation in Germany is one of conviction and conflict, innovation and destruction, shaping the continent's trajectory for generations to come. Amidst the fragmented political landscape of the post-Reformation German lands, a new power began to emerge from the northeastern territories, Brandenburg Prussia. Originating as a modest margraviate within the Holy Roman Empire, Brandenburg Prussia steadily transformed itself into a formidable military and political force, setting the stage for the eventual unification of Germany centuries later. This ascent was intertwined with the gradual decline of the Holy Roman Empire, whose decentralized structure and internal conflicts weakened its coherence and paved the way for rising regional powers. The rise of Brandenburg Prussia can be traced back to the early 17th century, when the Hohenzollern family consolidated control over the Margraviate of Brandenburg and later acquired the Duchy of Prussia. Though initially separated by geography, the duchy lying outside the empire's boundaries, these territories were united under the leadership of the electors of Brandenburg. Their ambition, military acumen, and administrative reforms laid the foundations for Prussia's emergence as a European great power. The 30 Years' War had devastated much of the Holy Roman Empire, leaving it politically fragmented and economically weakened. While the war's conclusion in 1648 through the Peace of Westphalia affirmed the sovereignty of individual princes, it also underscored the empire's diminished capacity to act as a unified state. This decentralization allowed regional rulers like the electors of Brandenburg to exercise greater autonomy and pursue their own agendas. Under the leadership of Frederick William, known as the Great Elector, 1640 to 1688, Brandenburg Prussia embarked on a path of military modernization and state building. Recognizing the importance of a strong army, Frederick William established a standing force funded by efficient taxation and centralized administration. This professional military became the backbone of Prussia's power, enabling it to defend its territories and expand influence amidst the turbulent European political scene. Frederick William also pursued religious tolerance to some degree, welcoming persecuted groups such as the Huguenots, whose skills and capital contributed to the economic revitalization of his domains. This pragmatic approach helped stabilize and develop Brandenburg Prussia, fostering a burgeoning economy alongside military strength. As the Holy Roman Empire continued to weaken, the electors of Brandenburg increased their diplomatic and military ambitions. They navigated alliances and conflicts with neighboring powers like Sweden, Poland, and the Habsburg monarchy, expanding their territorial holdings and political influence. The dual leadership over Brandenburg and Prussia, coupled with strategic marriages and treaties, laid the groundwork for a more centralized and powerful state. The decline of the Holy Roman Empire became more pronounced in the 18th century, as internal divisions, competing interests, and external pressures sapped imperial authority. The empire's decentralized structure, once a source of stability, became a liability in the face of emerging nation-states and centralized monarchies elsewhere in Europe. Meanwhile, Brandenburg Prussia's evolution into a kingdom was formalized in 1701 when Frederick I crowned himself king in Prussia. This elevation signaled the transformation of a regional power into a recognized monarchy with ambitions beyond the empire's confines. Prussia's militarization, administrative efficiency, and economic growth distinguished it from many other German states, positioning it as a leader in the German-speaking world. Culturally and intellectually, the 18th century saw the flourishing of the Enlightenment within German territories. Thinkers and artists contributed to new ideas about governance, society, and human rights, influencing both the rulers and the ruled. The Prussian monarchy, particularly under Frederick the Great, 1740 to 1786, embraced Enlightenment principles such as legal reform, religious tolerance, and educational advancement, even while maintaining strict authoritarian control. The complex interplay between rising powers like Prussia and the waning Holy Roman Empire set the stage for the eventual political realignments of the 19th century. Nationalist movements gained momentum among the German-speaking populations, inspired by cultural revival and the desire for political unity. Intellectuals and political leaders began to envision a Germany united under a strong central government, capable of standing alongside other European powers. Meanwhile, the empire's gradual dissolution was hastened by the Napoleonic Wars at the turn of the 19th century. Napoleon's campaigns swept through German territories, dismantling imperial structures and reorganizing the political map of Central Europe. The Holy Roman Empire, already weakened, formally ended in 1806 when Emperor Francis II abdicated under pressure from Napoleon's Confederation of the Rhine. In the aftermath, the German Confederation was established in 1815 as a loose association of German states, including Prussia and Austria, aimed at mutual defense and cooperation. However, this confederation lacked the cohesion and authority of a centralized state, leaving the question of German unification unresolved. During this period, cultural nationalism flourished, with writers, philosophers, and academics promoting a shared German identity rooted in language, history, and folklore. Figures such as Johann Gottfried Herder and the Brothers Grimm collected and celebrated German myths and traditions, fostering a sense of unity among disparate states. The rise of Prussia as a military and political powerhouse, combined with the decline of the Holy Roman Empire and the pressures of nationalism, created a dynamic yet volatile environment. The stage was set for ambitious leaders like Otto von Bismarck to harness these forces and pursue the unification of Germany under Prussian dominance. The intellectual and cultural movements of the 18th and early 19th centuries also contributed to the shaping of modern German society. Educational reforms, legal codifications, and artistic achievements reflected the Enlightenment's influence and prepared the populace for the political transformations ahead. The decline of the empire and the rise of Prussia illustrate the shifting balance of power in Europe during this era. Where once the Holy Roman Empire had symbolized continuity from the Roman past, by the 19th century it had become an anachronism, unable to meet the challenges of modern statehood and nationalism. In contrast, Prussia's militarization, administrative reforms, and embrace of Enlightenment ideas positioned it as the engine of German progress and unification. Its rise reshaped the political map of Central Europe and redefined the concept of German identity and sovereignty. This period, marked by the weakening of imperial authority and the ascendancy of regional powers, is pivotal in understanding the trajectory toward a unified German nation-state. The interplay of military ambition, political reform, cultural nationalism, and external conflict created the conditions for the dramatic transformations of the 19th century. The story of Brandenburg-Prussia's rise and the decline of the Holy Roman Empire encapsulates the complexities of German history during this era, a tapestry of fragmented sovereignties, evolving identities, and emerging modernity that would culminate in the birth of a new German empire. The 19th century ushered in a transformative era for the German lands, culminating in the unification of Germany under the leadership of Prussia and its astute statesman, Otto von Bismarck. This period was marked by a series of strategic wars, political maneuvering, and rapid industrialization that reshaped the fragmented German states into a cohesive empire, asserting a new power on the European stage. Otto von Bismarck, appointed Prime Minister of Prussia in 1862, was a master of realpolitik, wielding diplomacy and military force to achieve his vision of unifying Germany under Prussian dominance. His approach involved navigating the complex web of European alliances and rivalries, while capitalizing on nationalist sentiments brewing among the German people. The first significant step in this unification process was the Danish War of 1864. Bismarck allied with Austria to challenge Denmark's control over the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein, territories with mixed German and Danish populations. The swift victory not only expanded German territorial holdings but also set the stage for future conflicts by sowing discord between Prussia and Austria. Tensions between these two German powers escalated, leading to the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. Known as the 7 Weeks' War, this conflict was decisive in establishing Prussia's supremacy among the German states. Utilizing superior military organization and technology, Prussia defeated Austria and its allies, effectively excluding Austria from German affairs. The victory allowed Bismarck to reorganize the northern German states into the North German Confederation under Prussian leadership, consolidating power and further isolating Austria. Parallel to these military successes, Bismarck-adept managed diplomatic relations with France, seeking to prevent alliances that could threaten Prussia's ambitions. However, tensions with France culminated in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871, a conflict that galvanized German nationalism and rallied the southern German states to Prussia's side. The war began following a diplomatic incident known as the Ems Dispatch, which Bismarck skillfully edited to provoke French outrage, prompting France to declare war. Prussia's military, supported by its German allies, decisively defeated France, capturing Emperor Napoleon III and besieging Paris. The victory not only humiliated France but also unified the German states through shared triumph. In the aftermath, on January 18, 1871, in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, King Wilhelm I of Prussia was proclaimed German Emperor, marking the formal establishment of the German Empire. This event symbolized the culmination of decades of political and military efforts to unify Germany, with Prussia as its dominant state. The newly founded empire rapidly industrialized, benefiting from abundant natural resources, a growing population, and technological innovation. The construction of railways, expansion of coal and steel industries, and development of chemical and electrical sectors propelled Germany into an economic powerhouse. This industrial growth not only transformed the economy but also altered social structures, urbanizing the population and creating a burgeoning working class. Politically, the German Empire was a federal monarchy combining elements of authoritarian rule and parliamentary governance. While the Kaiser held significant executive power, the Reichstag, elected by universal male suffrage, represented the legislative branch. Bismarck skillfully balanced these institutions, implementing social reforms such as health insurance and pensions to appease growing labor movements and prevent socialist unrest. Despite internal stability, Germany's emergence as a major power disrupted the European balance, leading to rivalries and alliances that would later contribute to global conflict. The empire sought colonial possessions and engaged in naval expansion, asserting itself on the international stage. Socially, the rapid changes brought challenges, including class tensions and demands for political participation. The rise of socialism and labor movements prompted government responses ranging from reforms to repression. Nationalist ideologies flourished, often emphasizing ethnic German identity and cultural unity. Culturally, the unification inspired a renaissance of German arts, literature, and sciences, with figures like Richard Wagner and Johannes Brahms contributing to a distinct national culture. Education and universities expanded, fostering innovation and intellectual life. The unification under Prussia's leadership also entailed complexities, as regional identities and traditions persisted within the empire. The southern states, such as Bavaria and Württemberg, retained certain autonomies and cultural distinctions, reflecting the federal nature of the empire. Bismarck's diplomatic skill extended to maintaining peace in Europe through a complex system of alliances, aiming to isolate France and prevent multi-front conflicts. However, these alliances also created rigid blocs that heightened tensions. The German Empire's foundation represented a new chapter in European history, showcasing the power of nationalism, military strategy, and industrialization in shaping modern states. It demonstrated how a fragmented collection of territories could coalesce into a unified nation capable of influencing continental affairs. This period highlighted the interplay between tradition and modernity, as Germany balanced monarchical authority with emerging democratic institutions and social reforms. The empire's rapid development set the stage for both remarkable achievements and future challenges. The story of German unification under Otto von Bismarck is one of ambition, pragmatism, and transformation. It reflects the complexities of forging national identity amid diverse regional loyalties and the impact of global forces on domestic politics. As the German Empire took its place among Europe's great powers, it carried the legacy of centuries of history, from tribal confederations through medieval kingdoms and fragmented principalities to a modern nation-state, embodying the enduring quest for unity and strength. The dawn of the 20th century thrust Germany into a turbulent era marked by global conflict, political upheaval, and social transformation. As the German Empire's industrial and military might grew, so too did tensions both within its borders and across Europe, culminating in the devastating outbreak of World War I. The war would profoundly reshape Germany's political landscape, leading to the collapse of the monarchy and the fragile experiment of the Weimar Republic. Germany's involvement in World War I began in 1914, triggered by a complex web of alliances, nationalist fervor, and imperial ambitions. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary set off a chain reaction that drew Germany and its allies into a continental conflict. Germany's strategic plans, including the Schlieffen Plan, aimed to quickly defeat France in the west before turning east against Russia, but the war soon devolved into a prolonged and grueling stalemate. The war placed enormous strains on German society and its economy. Military conscription drained the workforce, while food shortages and blockades caused widespread hardship. The initial enthusiasm for the war gave way to disillusionment as casualties mounted and victory remained elusive. The home front was marked by political unrest, strikes, and growing opposition to the war effort. The defeat of Germany in 1918 was a turning point, leading to the abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm II and the end of the German monarchy. The emperor fled into exile, and a republic was proclaimed amidst revolutionary upheaval. The new Weimar Republic faced immense challenges from its inception, inheriting a nation devastated by war and burdened by the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty, signed in 1919, imposed severe reparations on Germany, territorial losses, and military restrictions. Many Germans viewed the treaty as a humiliation, fueling nationalist resentment and political extremism. The treaty's economic consequences exacerbated inflation and unemployment, undermining the fledgling republic's stability. The Weimar Republic struggled to establish democratic governance amid a polarized political environment. Left-wing uprisings, right-wing militias, and assassination attempts created an atmosphere of violence and instability. The government attempted reforms and sought international acceptance but faced persistent opposition from conservative and nationalist factions. The economic crisis peaked in the early 1920s with hyperinflation, decimating savings and livelihoods. The period of relative stabilization in the mid-1920s, known as the Golden Twenties, brought cultural flourishing and international cooperation, but underlying structural problems remained unresolved. The rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party in the late 1920s and early 1930s exploited widespread discontent, economic hardship, and fears of communism. Hitler's charismatic oratory and propaganda promised national revival, repudiation of the Versailles Treaty, and restoration of German pride. The Nazis' ascent culminated in Hitler's appointment as Chancellor in 1933 and the swift dismantling of democratic institutions. The Nazi regime transformed Germany into a totalitarian state, enforcing ideological conformity, suppressing dissent, and pursuing aggressive expansionist policies. This path led inexorably to World War II, a conflict of unprecedented scale and devastation, with Germany at its center. World War II wrought catastrophic consequences for Germany and the world. The war resulted in immense loss of life, destruction of cities, and the Holocaust's horrors. Germany's eventual defeat in 1945 ended the Nazi regime but left the country occupied and divided. The era of world wars and the Weimar Republic is a story of ambition, tragedy, and upheaval. It reflects the fragility of democratic institutions in times of crisis and the dangers of extremist ideologies. The legacy of this period continues to shape Germany's political culture and collective memory. Germany's journey through the early 20th century underscores the interplay of domestic challenges and international pressures. It reveals how unresolved grievances and socio-economic instability can fuel radical movements with devastating consequences. The Weimar Republic's experiences provided lessons in democratic governance, constitutional design, and social reconciliation. Its cultural achievements during periods of stability attest to the resilience and creativity of German society. The tumultuous decades encompassing World War I, the Weimar era, and World War II are central to understanding modern Germany's foundations. They highlight the complexities of national identity, the costs of conflict, and the enduring quest for peace and democracy. This chapter, marked by war and political transformation, sets the stage for Germany's post-war division and eventual reunification, continuing the long and intricate story of a nation shaped by history's most profound forces. The aftermath of World War II left Germany shattered, divided, and at a crossroads. In the wake of defeat and occupation by Allied forces, the nation found itself split into two distinct entities, the Federal Republic of Germany in the west and the German Democratic Republic in the east. This division was emblematic of the broader Cold War tensions that gripped the world, turning Germany into a front line of ideological confrontation between democracy and communism. The Federal Republic of Germany, commonly known as West Germany, was established in 1949 under the guidance and influence of Western Allied powers, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. It embarked on a path of democratic governance, economic recovery, and integration with Western Europe. The Marshall Plan and the Wirtschaftswunder, or economic miracle, fueled rapid industrial growth and rising living standards. West Germany became a founding member of the European Coal and Steel Community and later the European Economic Community, precursors to the modern European Union, signaling its commitment to cooperation and peace. In stark contrast, the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany, was formed under Soviet auspices, adopting a socialist system aligned with the Eastern Bloc. The government was controlled by the Socialist Unity Party, and the state exerted strict control over political, economic, and social life. The Berlin Wall, erected in 1961, became the physical and symbolic barrier dividing not only a city but two worlds, freedom and repression, capitalism, and communism. Life in the divided Germanies was marked by profound differences. West Germany embraced democratic ideals, political pluralism, and a market economy, gradually becoming a stable and prosperous society. East Germany, meanwhile, faced economic challenges, political suppression, and limited personal freedoms, though it boasted significant achievements in education and social welfare. The division of Germany had deep psychological and cultural effects. Families were separated, identities fractured, and the sense of unity that had defined earlier German history was disrupted. Yet, beneath the surface, a shared language, history, and culture persisted, fueling hopes for eventual reunification. The Cold War era saw Germany at the heart of global geopolitical tensions. Berlin became a focal point for espionage, diplomacy, and occasional crises, such as the Berlin airlift of 1948 to 1949, when Western powers supplied West Berlin amid Soviet blockade. These events underscored Germany's central role in the ideological struggle between East and West. The 1980s brought winds of change as reform movements gained momentum across Eastern Europe. In East Germany, popular protests demanding freedom and political reform culminated in the peaceful revolution of 1989. The fall of the Berlin Wall that year was a powerful symbol of the end of division and the beginning of a new chapter. German reunification followed swiftly in 1990, as East and West Germany merged into a single nation-state. This process involved enormous political, economic, and social challenges, including integrating two disparate systems and addressing the legacies of division. The newly unified Germany sought to redefine its identity and role in a rapidly changing Europe and world. In the decades since reunification, Germany has emerged as a leading global actor, committed to democracy, human rights, and multilateral cooperation. It has played a pivotal role in the European Union, advocating for economic integration, environmental sustainability, and peacekeeping efforts. Germany's economy is one of the largest and most advanced globally, reflecting its industrial heritage and innovation capacity. Contemporary Germany grapples with challenges including demographic shifts, immigration, and political polarization, but it continues to uphold the democratic principles forged in its post-war rebirth. The nation's cultural landscape is vibrant and diverse, embracing its history while looking forward to the future. Germany's journey from division to reunification encapsulates the broader 20th century struggles between authoritarianism and democracy, conflict and cooperation. It is a testament to resilience, reconciliation, and the enduring quest for unity. The story of modern Germany is inseparable from the legacy of its past, its triumphs and tragedies, and the lessons drawn from them. The nation's experience informs ongoing debates about identity, memory, and responsibility in a globalized world. As Germany moves forward, it carries the weight of history and the promise of renewal. Its narrative reflects the complexities of nationhood shaped by conquest, division, and reunification, embodying the spirit of a people striving for peace and prosperity. This final chapter in Germany's history marks not an end but a continuation, an evolving story of adaptation, challenge, and hope that resonates far beyond its borders. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.